in Newport, New York.
Tell us about your branch of the service and where you...
I went into the Army in 1967. We had a draft then. Actually, my younger brother was being drafted, and I was farm deferred at that time. And I felt I'd do justice with the family because he had been run over with a team of horses when he was younger. And so I went down to Yale, New York, local board 44, and I made my commitment with the service for 2 years. And after that, I went to September 7th, 1967 to Fort Polk. I got all my basic training out of the way. It was just basic training, a lot of PT and the Geneva Convention. From there, I went to Fort Polk. Fort Polk was the home to Vietnam. I was an infantry soldier, advanced infantry soldier. And there you learn advancement, the 60s, the 79s, and the whole 9 yards.
Can you tell us which infantry you were in?
I was in the 1st Cav Division in Vietnam. You know, it was air mobile, air assault, just like I was telling you earlier.
Right. Sometimes if there's something you were telling us, I might ask you again.
Yeah, no, don't, yeah, just,
okay.
you know.
All right. You know, once you got in there, well, tell us kind of what happened from there, you know.
Well, when I first went to Vietnam, I expected when we landed over to Vietnam, I expected we would get a couple of weeks to get familiar with the country, but it never worked that way. We landed at Bien Hoa Airport in the 3rd Corps. Vietnam was made up of 4 corps, and that was just slightly north of Saigon. And when we landed, they were getting hit, which we didn't know at the time. They had like little strobe lights on, so I can tell you a few lights, and the pilot had been there before, so we landed. They were getting rocketed. These 2 guys come out in these jumpsuits. They turned out to be Cobra gunship pilots, told us to go to a building and get under it for cover. An hour and a half later, an hour and 15 minutes, they called out 15 names. I was one of those 15 names. My original orders was to go to the Mekong Delta, the 9th Infantry Division. At that time, we didn't realize it, but the Cav had been hit hard. They had just made a major move to the DMZ, and that's why they called out 15 men to replace guys that had lost lives or lost limbs. So after that, an hour to 15, an hour and a half in-country hours, we went to a place up in 2 Corps, which was An Khê. An Khê was the home of the 1st Cav Division. They told us not to get too comfortable at that time, that we would be going out in choppers. And our ultimate goal was to take medical gear. We was to go to Charlie Company, 1st to 5th Cav, 1st Cav Division. We never did make it to Charlie Company. They set us down in the least resist place. And the still eats on me because we don't know if we could help save and tourniquet some of the soldiers to get them out of there. 36 hours later, we did catch up with our company. The Marines come out and got us. We were getting pounded. I don't know if you know anything about 1968. 1968 was the ultimate year in Vietnam. Over a third of the veterans that were killed in 68. We have a statistics sheet we take into school, and I can't tell you the number, but there's over a third of those that was killed in 68. Our Tet Offensive had started just prior to me getting over in Vietnam, and that's why I was moved quickly, I can see, into the infantry, because they needed soldiers and they needed bodies. January 30th was the Tet Offensive. That's why I wound up with the Cav, and the Cav had made a major move up there. A little bit about the Cav. In 65, they learned in our Trang Valley, where they lost all those soldiers, that they had to fight that different in World War II in Korea. They had to fight it with less men and cover more ground. At the height of the Vietnam War, we had 551,000, just for a little example. And a tenth of those were infantry soldiers. So I'd like to stress one point in this interview. I was no more important as being an infantry soldier than it was a guy that was bringing ammunition to me. I want that, you know, I like to state that because a lot of people feel they're unimportant in a war. They're not. Without that ammunition, I don't care if you're an airplane pilot or whatever, I was nothing. I had to have those 9 people to support me. I've learned that now because I had a lot of negativity towards the people until I met Chris Belke, our county veterans leader here in Herkimer County. And I said, Chris, where'd the ammunition come from? Well, luckily, I never knew at that time, but it was being delivered on ships. And that was one of Chris Belke's responsibility. So I've changed my attitude then. I always was a loner, you know, when I first come back from Vietnam, that I didn't really trust no one. But then I realized it did take those 9 people to support me. And the thing I'm going to stress again, I was no more important than anybody else. That was my job. I did carry a 60 over there. I started out with an M60. 16, excuse me. I went to the 10th day over there, and I learned what survival was. My gun did jam. I won't get in what survival is all about at that point, but I had to go to hand. That's what it did. We had to do. It's hard for me today because when I look back, I always look at the 10 Commandments. That's why I tell everybody, and when I go into schools, it's more about mediation, not confrontation. Confrontation is a lifetime of pain. And that's one of the reasons why, I want to do an interview like that, and that's why I go into schools, because I hope I can teach others that we've got to learn from our mistakes. For me, it has been not really freedom. I feel like my walls are all closed in. I don't remember my first kids growing up. I still regret that today. I have no animosity towards our country, don't take me wrong there. But I think when you go to war at the level that I went, and even World War II veterans, which I've learned now, you're closed in a box. That box is your world. For more World War II veterans, it was the battle. It was for the battle for me too. But I learned, after a couple of times of committing, tried to take my life with suicide. If it wasn't for Reverend McCummeron, he's still alive, he's still an alien, he's in his 80s. And if it wasn't for my wife and a state trooper, I wouldn't be here today because I wanted out. It's hard to come back. I think that's the main message people should get. You're in your own world. Everybody turns against you. They don't understand you, and I don't expect anybody to understand us because they haven't been there. It's one thing to be actively and engaged with the enemy and somebody on the sideline to say, well, I know. You'll never know. You'll never feel what that experience is like. And it's been hard. I like doing the schools, It's very hard. It's emotional. It's emotional like it is now. When I first went in the country, they did call out those 15 names. We did lose 10 of them. I can tell you exactly the hour and the time exactly how they died, but I'm not getting into that. That's personal with me. When I come back to this country, it was the hardest part of my life. I would never come back to this country if I'd known how I was going to be treated. We landed up in Seattle, and I can remember the second or third guy was Paul Stackle when he got off the plane. And all I can remember, they was throwing everything at us, and they hit us with dog crap. And the correct term is dog shit. He got hit. We asked Paul what they hit him with. He brought his hand across his face, and that's what it was. And I fought hard there because I wouldn't tolerate it. Me and a soul brother, Hendricks, he asked me if we was going to tolerate it. We didn't. So we went over and we started beating on them. Well, that didn't work out. All I remember the next day is winding up in a jail up there. And that morning, taking us to a plane, loading us on it and tell us not to ever come back again. That was my welcome home to America. I never expected that. I don't know why our government today ever allowed that. It's hard to explain. You wouldn't like that either. I expected them coming back. We kidded on the plane on the trip back. We hadn't seen women in I don't know when. There was ladies over there. That wasn't my cup of tea. My cup of tea, in the cab, you didn't have time for that kind of crap, and I wouldn't allow it in my own self anyway. I could envision ladies there and gentlemen, old and young alike. And I could picture that Old Glory there. And I think we all know what Old Glory is. It's red, white, and blue, and I love you. That's what we expected. It didn't happen. That was harder. That was harder in the war, really. It's hard when you come back. And we almost seen it here for Iraq, but I would never allow that to happen here from Iraq. They were starting to get violent. I don't know what people have touched in the Vietnam War. It's still to me today. We lost 4 in 1970 at Kent State University. I always bring that up. They were 4 innocent people that were killed. And that should always be brought up. And a lot of people like to close the chapter on it. You don't close the chapter. The chapter still burns in mine. And guys at my level, it isn't just me, it's them too. We feel they're included with us, that we lost the brotherhood in Vietnam. They're included in part of that. Even though they wasn't killed in Vietnam. They were killed here, but it shouldn't have happened.
You were talking about your family. Were you married before you went over there? When you
No, I had a girlfriend at that time. She went to Little Falls. I told her that when I left. My father had already told me that, girlfriends don't play in war. And besides, I know I was an infantry soldier. So my dad gave me a talk there. Not just my dad. In Fort Polk, as a matter of fact, Fort Dix, before I went there, I always respected the elderly guys. And a lot of them there, they had such a thing as they did in high school back when I was in there. You had to max out the 500 PT. We always maxed out, and these gentlemen knew that I was aggressive at that, and they could see me, and they actually told me what I would roughly be doing, that I would be leading, I would be walking point, and all that did follow true. But see, they were training me, and they see that I was aggressive in my PT training, and that did play out. They were right there, and they told me when I was going to Fort Polk that that was where I was going. I was going to be in infantry. And everything turned out right. You know, I didn't gain a lot of knowledge from them. I think my knowledge come from when we grew up. We grew up poor. I was shooting rabbits when I was 5 years old with a little .22 Savage that my grandmother had given me. That meat was our livelihood. We didn't have much. And that's some of the parts why I survived. You know, it was survival. I mean, they sent me to folded differential down in Fort Polk. I think they should have trained everybody with it. That's where if you mow your lawn 7 times, I can tell you the first time you mowed it. If you do it in 15-minute increments, that's where the dryness and the texture of it. And a lot of people didn't have that experience. You know, I kind of, you know, I'm getting a lot of this now because I go to counseling every month. Sometimes I break down. I have to go see the shrink, but I'm getting it now. I'm working it out. And one thing that's really hard for me, from September on, I can't tell you nothing about my tour. And the strengths and that thing, sometime there was a traumatic thing there. You know, I don't know. Did I kill one of our own guys? A lot of that goes through my mind. I don't know that. You know, but September, October, I have no recollection at the end of it.
Now you went in from, I need to get this.
I come February 68 to February 69 is what my tour was in Vietnam. And that was my tour. But from September, October, I can't tell you. All I know is I've got slides and I go into the kids there. And matter of fact, I've had to call Richard Roach. He's in Augsburg, New York. And I asked him, why was I carrying the P-25? I didn't realize I wasn't even carrying the 60 anymore. And the P-25 is a radio. One quick lesson in the infantry outfit, there's 3 guys if you get in a firefight. There's 3 guys you can always count on that lost their lives or limbs. They are the M60, they are your officers, or they are a P-25. They are the 3 guys. And a lot of things I like to teach students. And one gentleman not too long ago, I was down to Syracuse, the VA down there, and this gentleman come up to me. I wished I would have got his name. He wrapped his arm around me, he started crying. We both cried. We got all done. He thanked me because he was a student in a class that I went into. And I like to tell the students, if you're ever engaged in combat, it's always important for you to survive that 15 to 20 seconds. Get your upper extremities down. He was one gentleman that was in Afghanistan. From what I gathered from him, he was hit. He was there for medical treatment. I'm sorry I didn't get his name, but he wanted to thank me for giving him that advice. And that's what saved his life, was getting down. That first 15 to 20 minutes, if you're not hit instantly, you're not going to worry about it anyway. It's important you worry about your life first, then fight in the war. That's very important. And that's why I take into all my classrooms, you know, is that part of it. We wasn't never trained that. I don't know why they didn't train that. Maybe it would have scared us, I don't know. But I think, you know, the military actually failed us. There was a lot of knowledge they could have given us. And I think if we don't learn from our mistakes, that's bad. Because it means those 58,000 plus in Vietnam, the 497,000 from World War II, and the 67,000 from Korea, paid for what? That's what we have to ask ourselves. Them are numbers of people that were killed. A lot of people don't like to think about it. Or the 40-some thousand they're still not accounted for in World War II. And I think there's, in our wars, just under 1,800 today that's not accounted for. And one of the biggest dilemmas today to each me is the Iraq War in '91. Why our government let that lone missing Navy pilot, why they ever left him behind. That really eats me too. We had a chance to negotiate. They didn't even talk about him, didn't even enter him into the agreement in '91. They should have entered it in there. We had an opportunity to bring him home. Whether he's alive now or dead, I don't know. But we have to learn from our wars. We're not learning from it. We're not very good listeners and learners. But we have to bring them back.
When you say we have to bring them back, what would you suggest would be the way to do it? We
have to go over there. We have to bargain with the people. If it costs $1 million, we have to get them home. Okay. I think whatever we have to do. They had a chance in Vietnam at the end. And I think it was 300 or 200 and something that was going to bargain for, and they wanted $1 million. And Nixon said, no, we're not bargaining. But a life is worth $1 million. Just think of $1 million of parents and the pressure was on them. I don't think we have our priorities right.
You know, you're talking about a life is worth it. Well, let's come back to your life with a wife. You said you got married after Vietnam?
I got married, I can't even tell you that, I'm poor at remembering stuff. But I come back. How I met my wife, she told me, was through my cousin. He had come back from Vietnam after me, Dave Williams. And I was up there. That's how she said I met her in a short time there. And after we did get married, we had the 3 oldest. All I can remember is I can't tell you the date now. I remember I was cutting wood down to my parents. They were older. I always was with the respect the elderlies. I remember I was cutting the wood and I looked up and my manure spreader was missing. My sister come to help me buck up the wood or split it up down to my dad's. I said to my sister, is my old younger brother Guy, did he take out my manure? She said, no, I don't think so because the car's not up there, but the manure spreader was on my other farm. So I asked her to go up and see what the problem was. When she went up there, she found my son wrapped around the PTO shaft. That was my wake-up call to understand that I had 3 kids. My boy, I can't even tell you how old he was at that time, 15 or 16. My sister never could shut the tractor off. It was slipping, the clutch still on his neck. She got down to my father's and told me I don't remember going up there. I remember him still at PTO shaft, but apparently I shut everything off. And I rolled him out and I did what I could, the training I had from Vietnam. Some part it did help. And we were unfortunate because at that time they had phones. I guess this lady got a call, a Mankowski name, I don't know who she is today, but she come and started administering stuff and she had stuff to give him to stop him from going into shock. But that was my wake-up call. I feel bad today that I would have almost lost him. I can't remember my kids growing up.
Is that because you were shutting everything out because of the pain?
Probably.
And so your counselors have been working?
I never had no counselors, only one to that, and his name was Dr. Lewenstein, but he admitted he couldn't help me. I don't know if you know Dr. Lewenstein. When I got post-traumatic, Mary diagnosed me with it. I remember calling his wife, and I remember at that time, they never knew what it was.
PTSD.
They never knew what it was. All I can remember one time, I was going there for help because when I came back from Vietnam, I was in a lot of jails. I never caused trouble. I would go down to the barroom because I was with alcohol, but I was like a loner. We all were like loners, and I'd go down there into the bar, and maybe a young lady would come down there and feel sorry for me. I wouldn't know the young lady was married, and the next thing I knew, I was pounding the hell out of her husband. And I just didn't want nothing with that. I wanted to go home. But the cops would come, and the charges, there was never none pending. I've learned now because in later years I wondered when I went back, and Mary's helped me find out that. None of the charges ever could stick because the bartenders knew I kept to myself. And that's basically, I tried to fit into society. Nelson Party, I know you had him on the stage. I just learned this at the Little Falls Hospital. I mentioned the Little Falls in there. I said, stand music. I worked at Kelsey Hayes when I went to Vietnam. When I come back, I still was on the farm, helped my father, and was deferred, and I volunteered, but I always worked. And on the farm both. I basically worked 20 hours in. We was all poor, so we knew what work was. And when I come back, stand music actually went out of his way when I come back to Kelsey Hayes. But it was a joke in there. One time, all I can remember was, I can't remember getting to that point, a guy dropped a blade. We did turbine blades at Kelsey Hayes, we did. I did everything in there. Stand before the service. If he asked me to polish, I would polish. It was out of respect. That's how I grew up, as respect my elderly. He knew I would do anything he asked me in there. When I come, he expected back from Vietnam. But Stan would admit to you, is still alive today, that he tried his damnedest to get me to fit in, but I couldn't fit in. All I can remember last time, then I grabbed this guy, he dropped the blade. I was trying to stick my head through, underneath you have your polishing wheels and your grinding wheels, and I remember trying to stick my head in there and looking up at this guy, and he was laughing at me. That's the only part I can remember. And I grabbed him, and I almost put his head through that grinder. I can still remember the blood going around the wheel. And I can remember throwing them on the ground, and I can still remember looking at Stan. Stan, you did your best. I'm going home. Because if I don't, I'm going to kill somebody. I'm going home. It's no joke no more. But it was a big joke. That's why I come home. But Stan bent his shape out of it. And when Nelson Party heard that, Nelson Party worked in that same thing. He can't kind of remember me. He said he wouldn't allow it if he was there. But I don't think he would have. It's hindsight now. But Stan This Music was his boss. And Stan Music, I know from another gentleman, told me he always prayed for me, just like this psychiatrist. When I called this Mrs. Lewensting, I called her one day and asked her if Mary could have my record. She should by all means. And her and her husband even admitted they couldn't help me. But they did try. They speeded up my heart. One time there was a lady come down the road. If she hadn't, I would be dead today. Because they slowed down my heart so slow that all I can remember is my nerves. I run all the time. I own 2 farms. I don't take and go down and get parts. I run physically and get those parts. That's what keeps my adrenaline down. And I remember that time running down through there, and next thing I knew, I woke up. I was in the back of this van, and it turned out to be it was her ambulance. And this lady told me she was following me, and she seen me finally kick right over in the ditch. And what it was, the medication had lowered my heart rhythm down, and it would have killed me. I have no animosity towards Mr. Lewensting, but I told him there was no more. The sessions were over. I'm not going to do it anymore. But I did try to get help. They didn't understand help then. And World War II veterans, which they knew nothing of either, because my dad did, but he went back to the bottle.
Yeah, we've had other men who said that happened too, and then they would spend several months in a hospital or something.
Yeah, my dad did too, and he just lived in a bottle. My dad was very aggressive towards us. I can tell you what a beating was, but I can tell you I did ask my 2 other brothers and sisters to ask Dad for forgiveness. And I did do that, because my dad would never done it. I never did hit my kids. I do regret a couple times after my boy had that accident of being nose to nose. But he did back down. And I'm glad he did, because I might have broke my own son's neck. He did back down, and I regret even having those couple of confrontations. I never had to hit him. And I think people should understand that. Until you understand that, I don't think, what gets me is I think we have to move from something we have. Mediation's the only way. Confrontation doesn't get us anywhere.
When you said that Mary about the post-traumatic stress.
Mary kind of see it in me. I didn't really like it when she told me, to be honest with you, but she called my wife, and some point in your life you've got to start understanding there's something wrong. And I think about 5 years ago I understood there was a lot wrong.
Have you been able to go to any meetings or support groups with other Vietnam vets?
That's all my life now. Me and Lou, I take this year I like going out west. I don't like New York, because the people I have nothing against people, but I like it where it's isolated. And I've taken 2 trips now in the fall, and I'm going to again. I wish my wife would go, but it's not her cup of tea. So I go with another vet. I fit in well with other vets. It doesn't matter if it's my war. I was over to Herkimer School, Mr. Clark, and I've learned more about Miles Senup, and I try to learn more. They're no different than I am. And if you've interviewed Miles, you'll understand one thing about Mr. Senup. It's that goddamn Hitler flag, and how he had to come down and salute that son of a bitch. That's what it's all about. And Miles hates that. And so we relate very good. I relate with all veterans that've been there, as long as they've been combat veterans. Non-combat veterans don't get it. I respect them, but they should understand and respect us. Just like I respect everyone that was in the Vietnam War. There was at that time 9 million in that conflict as far as in the war overall. Whether it be in Germany or whatever, 3.1 were in Vietnam. I respect the other 6 million, but they've got to respect me too. It was a lottery system. It's like I told you with the 9 supporting me, and some of them irritate me. That's why it's best for me being with the combat vet, or the vets have been in my, I do hang out with them. They are my life. Howard, Mitchell, I can name a lot of them. We do hang together. Most of them that I go and do schools are the, in-country vets who are in Vietnam.
So you really, so the message then to the young people, as you were saying, is
The biggest thing I like to see is mediation. Learn from our mistakes and don't keep repeating them, because we repeated them, as far as I'm concerned, in every war so far. Let's get on to the Huxley situation. Why don't they see that that family's taken care of? They haven't, as far as I'm concerned. I think the support should be there more than it was. I think it's a slap in the face. Then again, we haven't learned from past wars. I think they should learn to respect and go to where the parents are now. That in our war or any other war, it was good to be there for them for that instant. And it's good to say bye-bye. I'm not coming to see you no more. I know that. Mom Hendricks, when I used to get down and depressed, I called her a lot. Because she lost buddy. You know, and it meant a lot to me. She was like a mom to me. Actually, she was a closer mom to me than actually my own mom. Because my own mom, you know, when I come back, she used to tell me, well, you've got to straighten up. I said, Mom, how can I straighten up? What am I going to have to do to please you? I'm not that same son that you left. I can't be like Dover. It doesn't work that way. Your life changes forever. It doesn't go back. It's gone. You don't come back that same person. You're another person. But they need help. I don't like the statement they made with Jesse Lynch. I'm very irritated that they could make that statement that she'll be all right, she'll be 100%, and she'll be fine. That gentleman is sick. He's sick just to make a statement like that. That lady's going to always have problems. And I will see her in my lifetime and tell her, one thing I will do is walk up and hug her and thank her for her service to my country and for my freedom. That means a lot to soldiers. It will mean a lot to her. And to tell her she's never going to be right. But the phone is there. And she can always call me, like I've told the Huxleys. But the Huxleys don't have to call. I will go back and see them time and time again. Because they need that. They're not going to come up and say, George, would you come up and see me? They shouldn't be expected to do that. They're loners now, and they're isolated. And it's all of our responsibility, not just mine, to maybe pop in and say, can I help you do this and do that? And just reach up and grab Mom and Dad and say, I want to thank you for sacrificing your son for my freedom. But people don't remember that. They don't want to know about tomorrow. It's forgotten. Maybe it's me. Maybe it's at my level. But I doubt it. Because I've seen it. When I first come back, that's another thing we'll do right here. When I first come back and I come out of being locked up, I come into Chicago Airport with O'Hare with Mr. Hendricks. He was in the 60 gun over there. We went into the bar room in there. I didn't realize at that time you had to be 21 in Chicago. It was very irritating. We told the guy he would service. He knew he was angry. He did service. God bless him. And from that point on, I called my mom. Back at that time, we had Western Union. I said, I want every friggin' dime that I got in that bank, and I want it wired right here to this Western Union at that airport at O'Hare. And she did that. And that's when I went on my journey. That's when I went to the 10 of them that lost their lives in Vietnam. And that's a journey I'm glad I spent every damn dime doing. And that's why I know what I know now. What goes on in those moms and dads, it's more the moms. The moms is something you can't imagine how it hurts and the pain lingers there. I didn't get to be with Mom Hendricks. She died fast before I got a time to be down there. But her older sister said that I meant more to her than her own children. And I told Nancy and Punky, I can't think of her real name, the other daughter, that don't take that as a slap in the face. She loved you. She said, I know it. But I was always there for her. And we did have each other's shoulder to cry on. And she called me many a times, and I called her back. Because that was expected of her. And I expected that. Because she needed somebody. And that meant more to me in life itself. And I've told my wife that more than once. But we have to be there for them. We can't turn our backs, and we all do.
So you went to all 9?
The 10 of them. There were 10 of them. I went to all 10 of them, every one of them. Let me tell you a little bit about John Duffy. Let me touch on this gentleman. This gentleman was an Irishman. He moved here in '66. His mother and father were in Ireland. The Catholics and Protestants fought and were killing each other. And they had a chance to come to this country. I never asked them how they happened to get here. They went to Bayonne, New Jersey. In 1967, he sat down with this table. They were Catholics. He said, Mom, and he said, George, you always got permission from your mom. He said, Mom, I want to serve her. I want to serve America. They give me and Sis a chance to come to this country. And he says, if it means to where it takes me, because the draft was in, it will take me. I don't want no tears, Mom. But most importantly, I want your permission. His mother gave him his permission. And he went on to Vietnam. In August 2nd of 68, he paid the dear price. And the thing I can tell students, and I try to remind them, he had come in this country, and he was so grateful, and he gave his life. And the thing that John, the last thing I can remember him was, I want to serve her to the fullest extent. It's not important if I die. It's that I got a chance to serve her. Think about it. What irritates me today is one of the biggest things in this country that eats me. That's why I could never come out of my hide. You get all kind of foreigners coming here. You're most likely a foreigner just as much as I am. I'm an immigrant. We've traced it back to 1700. I think we should knock that off. I realize they're taking some of our jobs, but that should be behind sight. They're just as important as we are. But John Duffy, it meant so much to him to come to this country. And the opportunity to serve. August 2nd, he lost his life. You know, he was just like you and I. An awful nice kid. I can still see him today. That Irish accent, I can still see him today. And I went through basic and AIT with him.
Every person has an amazing story.
Yep. And all these individuals, you know. I got real close to Buddy Hendricks. And I think one of the things that was hard for me with Buddy is when we loaded him on that chopper. 3 frags you got, Buddy. And I lived with the rest of my life. As when I put him on that chopper, he was very white and pale. I never can forget that day. And he reached over and clamped my arm. And he asked me not to let him die. And I promised him. And I keep reliving it. I didn't want him to die. He had lost both of his legs. Just last year, his sister asked me what happened, and I told her. I wouldn't tell her because I didn't want her going back to Mom, but I did tell Mom. And I promised Mom I'd never tell his sister, the daughter. And I never did until she died. But he actually bled to death. We couldn't stop him. I can still remember him reaching out.
Gave him comfort at the time when he needed it.
But I still let him die. He was such a good gentleman.
You gave him what you could give. Right at that minute.
That's basically what we did. The cab was air assault, like I told you earlier. It's air mobile. We did many firefights, 2 and 3 in a day. I don't know if you even know where the firefight is. A firefight's where they know where the enemy is, and we go in and take them out. 4 choppers. I like to relate to the students. A lot of students have seen this, the Air Train movie. We Were Soldiers Once and Young. I don't know if you even watched it. But I'm a little upset with it. It's a lot of John Wayne. I tell the students I'm upset with it. I think it's a movie, a profit thing, and it irritates me because I was in the Cav, and I know guys was in the Cav then, but it was, a lot of it was real. They landed choppers, and they learned from them. Our Train Valley was actually a learning and a staging ground for me and being alive today. They landed the choppers on the ground. We come 10 or 15 feet from the ground, and what we learned was 4 choppers after the last live round, whether it be an Air Force jet going in there, dropping ordnance 500-pound bombs. If that 500-pound bomb went off, and when it did, We would put 4 choppers in there. We would put 24 men at 15 feet off the ground would be in there within 30 seconds. That was their mobile, and that was their assault. That's why the Cav took the hardest pounder in Vietnam. I'm not doing it as bragging, because we're not bragging. They learned they had to speed war up. You had to get on the same ground in the level with the enemy. That I can't complain. They did one hell of a good job there. But that was the risk. We did take a lot of the high risk. 68 and 69, during halfway through my tour, the 101st went the same way. And basically all the divisions learned. But they learned through the cabin. And it was a good way. Our Training Valley, when they touched down in that movie, a lot of guys were running from the choppers. They never run from the choppers. In the actual reality, our Training Valley, they were killed right on the choppers. They were fried there. So I owe it to them. I do mention that in the schools. And I think it's important that we did learn a lesson there. And I think it's important that the government did learn from that. But they've got a lot to learn, you know. I don't know, understand why they fought the war the way they did over here. They're doing a tremendous job. They have 100% praise for me for Afghanistan. If they needed me for each one of these wars, they know I will go. And I've got a lot of fight left. If it means I can save an 18-year-old, I will give them what I got left. I've got the training. But in Afghanistan, to give you a little bit of thing, what they're doing right there, they're doing LRPs. I did LRPs in Vietnam. That's 4 or 5 man. And your objectivity is not to kill the enemy. It's to call firepower in. But today they've got these beaming up all this stuff, and they, like we had the P-25. They have learned there too. No more P-25. P-25 in Vietnam for us, you couldn't turn the volume up. They could hear that static a half a mile, and if they heard it, they grouped in on you and killed you. Over there, they got these little cell phones and everything else. But they have learned. They are doing these little LRP teams. If you've got guys that do get pinned down and you lose 4 or 5 guys, it's better than a company. And all basically they're doing over there, they're doing the war right there. Why they didn't do more of that in Iraq, I really don't understand. But they did do a lot of Iraq, which someday both you lady and the gentleman here, you will understand someday. But I already know they had 4 or 5 man teams behind the thing. I already know that where Saddam was, that we know through this intelligence, because I did LLRP in Vietnam. That was long range reconnaissance patrol. My particular job there was, when I did it, matter of fact, Captain Terry and even Captain Craps, as 2 of my captains, asked me if I would do it, because I was eager and to get out front. If you got in a firefight, I brought the 60 up. A lot of guys wouldn't. But that was the job of a 60 gunner. The 60 was like a mother of all your troops. I like to relate as. It was 550 rounds a minute. That was the only gun that we had that we could trust. And that's going to be hard for a lot of people to swallow, because the next 2 weapons, best weapons in Vietnam, was an AK-47 and SKS. You may have not even heard that yet, but that's the truth. And that's why that 60 had to go up to the front. But the LRP is basically what you do is you go out and gather intelligence, and you bring it back with your radio. You confront the enemy if you can knock that enemy down. If you cannot, your orders with us was, leave it alone. One time on one of these LRPs, I can tell you we counted over 1,000 enemy that went by us. That particular time, they let it go by. They even skirted our company, everything in the area, and they pounded it with B-52s. They did it the right way. You know, that's the way you do it. That's the way I'd like to do all of Vietnam. And if I was going to do it today, I've told these military people, you want me today, I'll go. I will go with guys that I know their weaknesses and their strong point. That's another thing I picked up in basic and AIT. That's why when I got to Vietnam, I was with a lot of these guys, like the John Duffy. He had some weaknesses. Richard Roach was a weakness. He's the guy who lives in Augsburg today. If you got in a firefight, he liked to get back. But Richard, I always told Richard, if I'm killed, the most important thing to me in Vietnam was my body was coming home. Because my mother was pissed when I come back making that deal at Local Board 44. And she had every reason. She lost Gordy in the South Pacific, one of her own brothers. She lost Harvey in Korea. And her other brother, Russell, was in Walter Reed fighting malaria. He was in World War II. We're trying to document that now. He came down with malaria. He didn't get actually into the fighting, but he laid down in Walter Reed for 5 years. She had a reason for being mad at me, you know. And I think it's important for people to understand, you know, that your mothers have got to learn to change, but And I had a hard time coming back. Like my mother, we didn't get along. It took time to get along. And,
She wanted those bodies returned that had never been returned.
well, my mother wanted, as far as my mother, she wanted that kid back that went over there. The fun-loving one, you know.
Their child, a mother is not going to change.
I remember the first night back, that night when I come home, Nick Gay come after me. He was a World War II veteran. I wish he's alive now. He's not alive. And I come back because he knew what it was like. Korean got the same slap that we did. That's a forgotten war. I feel sorry for those guys. And Nick met me down the Hancock Field after I finally got back from seeing these 10 guys that lost their lives and the mothers. And I told Nick I didn't really want to go to Byram's, but we bar hopped back. And we got back, and I went upstairs, you know. And my dad, he was out of the picture, you know. He knew that all hell, when I look back now, he knew all hell was going to break loose. And he come back about 2 o'clock in the morning, and the car kind of backfired. And I don't remember much. I woke up that morning, and we had an older house where there's 2 sides to the upstairs. When I woke up, I remember my bed was all soaked. I couldn't believe what the hang was going on here. The divider was in between the thing was missing. There was blood all over. I had taken out that wall physically. Even today, I have a hard time. My mother, for a long time, wouldn't even come in the house. She was actually deathly afraid of me. So she had her reasons.
Have you been to Washington to see the veterans?
I just went. It was hard, but as long as I was with the veterans, I did like Washington because the buildings wasn't high. I told the guys if I didn't like it, I was going to get a taxi and come back. But I just went there. It was very moving, you know. Very moving.
So you were able to share that with your...
I was a little irritated at the wall because some of the guys that went on there, we couldn't find them originally. They had moved the dates. I know when they were killed. I did call Richard Roach and I got back, and he had already known it. He knew it would irritate me. And he's been irritated. I think, you know, you got to give the guys when they're killed a certain date. It should be on there. They weren't the dates. And he'd eat you. But Richard Roach said he knew that, and I was pissed. That ruined my trip a little bit. I went back to the hotel. You know, I told him it takes a lot out of you know why they would move the dates. But Mike Wiener's the guy that said that they did a lot of it in Vietnam because they didn't want it. It was growing such a controversy. To give you a little example, Quezon up there, the Marines were there. If you lost 100 guys, people back here wasn't putting up with it anymore. They would put like 20 here, move 20 over here, so it didn't look so bad on paper. That ain't the way you do business. You tell it. The truth is the truth, you know, and they covered up a lot of truth. That really ate me there. It did. Jimmy Bang was the one particular guy I was really hated. I just ate up over Jimmy. Jimmy had, by the way, went back to Hawaii and you want an R&R. We have an R&R, what they call in Vietnam. He went back, he had a child with this lady, and he wanted to do what was right, so he met her on his R&R. They got married, and 2 weeks later, he lost his life. 2 weeks later. And he had that little, you know, people don't understand it. I wonder if there's anybody. I got close this coming year, but I did get scared. Me and Lou, I did plan on going to Minneapolis, Minnesota. We'd come about 20 or 30 miles from there, and I told Lou I can't do it. So we backed off. This year I hope maybe I can go on. I want to see this lady. I want to see that little one. I want to let her know about Jimmy. And what Jimmy, you know, last days before he died, and the words he said that he wanted to convey her, because I don't think anybody ever conveyed those words. But like I said, I did back out.
Yeah, you hold a lot of those things that happened right then at that moment. And you're the only one who could share those feelings.
Because he shared it. You know, when they teach you to go out of Fort Polk was never to get to know that guy. How the hell do you? You can't do it. You know, when I talk with a lot of guys, and I think I can remember as much as probably anybody, but I think it's growing up poor, and we always learned respect. I never knew what a black man was. I did 4 or 5 years ago. I finally tried it. I thought I got a hold of Ike. He was my assistant gunner. And at that time, he lived in Brooklyn. I did go to his home. I never was to a black man's home from Fort Dix, excuse me. And I called down there, but it happened to be his junior, his son, and his dad. That really hurts me because I always wanted to see Ike again. He was black as coal, but I was closer with him I could ever be in my own family. But I think people don't understand when you're in war. That guy is your life. There is nobody there. There isn't your brothers or nothing. I mean, I tried to tell Mom, you don't understand, Mom. I can't come back. You know, my brothers don't mean so much to me anymore. These guys were what it was all about. You know,
Have you seen through the years, well, you probably have seen vets who've adjusted differently. You know, their lives have taken different roads, and they've adjusted differently. And do you look at some and say, gee, I wish that I was as calm as you, or I wish
No.
that, do you see there's any difference in that? Or no?
I don't, everybody had their own job. But there's vets out there that feel like I do. I just met one, it was a small world. I was snowmobiling last year. I like to go out alone, and I went in the Ridge Runners over there, and this guy come up, George Dixon, and he looked at me, and I don't remember him. But this guy was so happy, I thought he was going to squeeze me to death. But the guy did know me from Vietnam. So he said, I told him who I was, and I gave him my phone number because he asked me about 10 times. Then I called my son because I was just, you know, I told him, I said, well, get my son over here because I can't. It was emotionally, it drained me. Instantly, everything, I was drained. I was physically drained then because I know the guy. When I mentioned Richard Roach, yeah, I know Richard Roach. But this guy was in our own platoon, in our own squad, but you know, I know something? I honestly can tell you I don't remember him. But get this, he went home with his wife. We have a computer. My son, you know, like I said, he come right over, he did. My son drove her over the Ridge Runners because I was just drained. To think that this guy, I knew he knew me, but I didn't know him. And I felt that bad. I said, let's get a hold of my son, you know. And I know he knows me because he knew Richard Roach, and Richard Roach and I were like that. And Richard Roach is, I think, why I blanked him out. In war, I was the upper level. When the assault took place, it was my job to go up front and Richard stepped back. And I think he stepped back with Rich. That's why I can tell you everything about Harold Wykster. If I see Harold Wykster, Richard Livingston, I can't find Leo Hall, Roger Wanamaker. That's why us guys went up another level. And that's why. And like I said, when he hugged me, I thought he was going to squeeze me to death. But he's hurting too. He bought this camp way back up there 4 miles, no electric or nothing. You know, and that's what us guys that do. So the other guys in Vietnam, I respect everybody. I have nothing against them. But I think you have to walk the shoes to fill the shoes. But George is the same way I am. He asked me to go over there. I do go over. I've been over there 4 or 5 times now. You know, and I apologize because I can't remember, because I can't remember him. You know, no member. But he does know me. He remembers everything about me. I can tell you I was hit 5 or 6 times over there. Don't even remember it. How would you like it last year? I was out in, let's see, Cheyenne, Wyoming. I went out there because I can remember this, Jeff Cummings. I knock on the door out there, and the guy opens the door, and this guy turned completely white. He's looking at me like I'm going to kill him or something. He turned totally white. I said, Jeff, what's wrong? He said, George, you ain't going to kill me. You wanted to kill me in Vietnam. Why, Jeff? Why would I want to do that? You don't remember me hitting you with shrapnel with the M79? Jeff, even if you did, I really don't give a damn, Jeff. Why would I want to? He said at the time, maybe I did at the time. I said, I'm here now. So we did give each other a hug and we cried, but he always was a little defensive, and that whiteness never come out. And I did feel uneasiness, and I told Jeff I was leaving. He says, I know I'm probably sensing it, George. I always figured you was going to come after me. And what happened was we did get in a firefight. I was so far out in front, and not just me, and I guess he fired the M79. I don't know if you know what it is. It's a round, and it's about 3 inches long. It's yay round, and it's like a mortar round. And he was putting that in between us, and Captain Terry ordered it because they actually thought they was going to overrun us. They didn't overrun our forward position, but it wasn't Captain Terry, I take it back, it was Captain Kane. And he ordered to throw it up, and I guess I did get hit, and I was pissed at him. But I said, and I've talked with him since, and I told him this year I'm going to go back out and see him because I really felt hurt, I told him. You know, because I could feel uneasiness there, and he had a reason probably, you know.
Well, I think that you're living with a lot of uneasiness. You talked about the issue of trust, and that you just couldn't trust anybody. Was the trust because of the enemy, or was the trust because of the reception?
I think, when you got in war, let me tell you about a guy, Todd Fowler. I always hated that son of a bitch. He was on his third year over there. This guy, I looked it up, was 39 years old. I know he was older. And he was gun old. We already had a bunch of wives and he couldn't go home. But I hated him. Every firefight that got a Category 5 like a tornado, a major, he wanted us in it. But I think when I look back now, we become a top follower. And I think, you separate yourself drastically in a company. Like Richard Roach and those guys going back. I think, I did become a top, and a lot of us did. We hated him. But I think it's survival. I think it comes down to you want to survive. And I know I was living with it because I knew my mother lost 2 brothers. And I really didn't think of it when I signed up and made my contract. Maybe it was a guilt. I can't tell you. But I know goddamn well I was going to come home. And I knew I was trained with that 60. And if they are out there, them son of a bitches are going to die. Because it's like what they said in Iraq. A lot of those troops, you heard them before they went. They knew they had to go through Iraq to come home. And I think that was basically what I had to do. My job was a tour. Wound, come back, or whatever. I had my job to do. And that was the only way home. And I probably did get anxious. I don't know what happened. I know the shrink says maybe you killed an American. Maybe you had a confrontation. I don't know that. And if God forbid it is, I hope I never realize that.
It's been safer to repress some of that. So it's not safer.
Because I think we become the top follower.
You said you were hit 5 or 6 times?
With shrapnel.
Yeah.
I've got the kids and students, and they asked me, and said what happened there. I can't even tell you. I wasn't the guy. I remember one time walking up Da Nang, and matter of fact, what brought back that memory was down there the wall. I seen these 2 ladies. I walked right up, and I just hugged that lady. I got her card and everything. She's in the last, 3 of them, excuse me. They were donut dollies, and I didn't know it, but my mind triggered me, and Chris and Mary was down there with me, and they couldn't believe I run right up to these ladies, and I grabbed them. All I could see these ladies with these hats. And afterwards, Mary and them figured out. When I was in Da Nang, we had donut dollies, and that's where I picked up and probably remember flashbacks of these ladies. I remember picking up that lady. I wanted to thank her because all I can remember waking up. But I went back to the field. They couldn't do nothing with me in the back. I felt the guilt trip. I wanted to go back. I spent my tour in Vietnam. That was unusual. Usually they tried to get you out of there. I know even Richard Roach today said, George, I tried my damnedest. We got you back there. When I meant the rear is back where the artillery, where you're more secured. You're not safe any place in Vietnam. But I didn't feel that where my place was. I felt that where my training was out there. And I did thank Richard Roach because I have talked to him a few times. And as a matter of fact, we've got a major thing coming up. I haven't made up my mind yet. I don't know if I can go alone because we got it right now. They've had it last year. My wife, I give her a lot of these names and that. Kelsey, Loranda Kelsey, and you can go on the Cav Division. She did irritate me because she went and pulled some action reports. You've probably never seen an action report in your lifetime. But we've put some of this on the Cav. I wish I'd have thought to bring that. And anyways, I went on there one time and I was very irritated. One particular one was May 9th. I don't think they have it correct as far as everything visually of May 9th of 1968. Richard Roach and I and some guys differ with what her dad seen. That particular day, I'll never forget the rest of my life. That's the day that, by the way, that her dad was given a Silver Star. They said afterwards, but we were slightly overrun. I can still hear Captain Terry calling the artillery. And I can still this day hear him saying abort it. What happened was the guys in the rear, I keep on mentioning the rear. Rear is people in the back. I try to, it's nothing sexually. I try to, the kids, I say a lot of things, and a lot of teachers walk, what does that mean? If you don't ask, that's what we called it back then. But anyways, we called the coordinates in, Captain Terry did, and they called back the same grid coordinates they called in. You call 2 set of coordinates in when you call in for artillery. One is your location, always first. Second is the area you wanted destroyed. They called back all the 3 times. We repeat it 3 times out, 3 times back. And when they called back the second 3, it come back the first 3. We were in trouble. That ammo, those 155 Hollisters coming in on top of us, That's what did destruction that day. We were getting hit and practically overrun. And Captain Terry, I've talked to him on the phone, but I'm not blaming Captain Terry. Captain Terry's whole brain's reconstruction, because it took out the side of his head. You know, so I don't think those guys got it right. On our hull, we lost Buddy Baker. Buddy Baker was a soul brother, and he moved over. I still feel that. I'm really sick because I wished he hadn't, because sometimes the colored people like to be by themselves. And he said, George, I want to stay that night on that hull. I wasn't the commander at our hull because that guy was on R&R, but I was the next in charge. And I still feel that guilt trip because he went over there. And by the way, they never dug a foxhole. That's what actually killed them. Because when they come in these artillery rounds, they hit the top of these trees, and I think there was 9 or 10 killed, and most of them was killed from was not the shrapnel, it was the bark. Some of it just pierced them right straight through them. But they haven't got that right. But they're having this thing coming up, and I would go, but I told my wife I think the biggest setback for me would be, I want to see Roger Wanamaker. I want to see Leo Hall and some of these guys, and if I didn't see them, it would be a wasted trip. And I knew where Harold was, and Harold's having trouble now. And so my wife's going to try to help me, because this is taking place, I think, 19th or 20th. Virginia, don't quote me, or Tennessee, I can't. And, you know, it hurts if I went there, and so many guys I want to see, I've tried finding. We can't find nothing. I know with Chris Belk's help, we know they're not in the obituary column, because he knows how to go to if anybody's died with that. And so apparently they're still alive. I can picture Leo Hall being one of these guys in the street with a bag, lunch, a homeless. I hope not. Maybe even Roger Wanamaker. But that's what hurts, you know.
What would be the final thing that you would want to say to some young person growing up who needs to have just a taste of what you need to say to them? What would be the final, the last thing you'd say?
I think, you know, really that to learn from our lessons is what I want to leave with everybody. Let's don't keep repeating. You know, as a nation, why are we keep repeating them? I think they have to sense the pain that's out there. It's forgotten pain. It's just not me. It's World War II veterans. I go into some of them even today. They'll sit there and cry that's been divorced 2 or 3 times. And I think they have to realize it's there. Let's don't turn our backs to it. It's real. That we have to confront it. And I think what I'd like to tell them, you know, that I had one hell of an extraordinary wife. Because I wouldn't be here today. That's how I'd like to close it.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, because it was